You're hanging out in the House of Sunny podcast, where it's always sunny, mostly because of your host, comedian and YouTuber, Sunny Loman. Want to know what Sunny and her friends are thinking about this week? Well, here she is, Sunny Loman.
Hey everybody, welcome to the House of Sunny podcast. I'm here with Doug this week. Yay!
Hey, what's
I'm not
going
alone.
on? That's right. I've decided to rejoin.
I was telling Doug that I obviously have no problem talking to myself for an hour, and like I actually got upset and was like yelling, and I'm like sitting here alone in a room. Anyway, check out last week's podcast. I'm basically by myself. Doug listened to it and he has a take on what I said. So we're going to listen to that first. And he said it ties into basically what I said I wanted to do this week, which is I want to review the 2022 stories, the most impactful things that happened in 2022 in our lives, both good and bad. And we each have a man of the year. So he said his take on last week's podcast ties into the man of the year. So I think we'll start with that.
We probably have the same thing, but yeah.
Maybe.
By the way, is anyone shocked that you were able to talk to yourself for an hour?
I wasn't.
Like, you could have gone for a lot longer.
I could have. I remember the first time I did radio, somebody was like, it was a 3-hour radio show on a Saturday. The very first time they sat me in front of a mic, and it was like, it was a major talk radio station. It was the Minneapolis talk radio station. It's like the 16th largest market in talk radio. Oh, here, have a mic for 3 hours. Let's see if you can do it. No problem. No problem. So that's when I knew I had like this annoying habit of mine is actually it's like a superpower.
Is it? Okay. I guess you could regard it that way.
At least it's good for something.
Yeah.
The other thing I just want to say before we get started is that Doug and I are going to take January off. So, and I think we've done this before. It may be that we're just going to rethink kind of everything. And it's also just good for me to stop doing this so I can stop being online, because I think this motivates me to get out and just like be kind of a news junkie. And I need a break. And January is a good month to do that because everybody else is kind of hunkered down. So I'm going to be off all of social media. I'm taking the month off of social media and news and everything. Right. I figure Elon Musk has it under control, and I'm just going to stop. Yeah. I don't need to be out there and save the world. He's doing it. Yeah. So I'm taking January off, and Doug's going to do that too. So we will see you in February after this episode. Okay. All right, everybody, let's jump into it. So last week I kind of did I was just feeling very black-pilled. I was feeling very down in the dumps, all of these negative stories all the time, and trying to make myself feel more positive by thinking about, it's weird. It's like we're obviously trending bad, but you see more and more of this sort of building of heroic good. And I think what part of the problem was we didn't realize how in the mud we were. And now we know more. Because when things come out like, oh, okay, the CIA really did assassinate JFK. It's like, okay, so things haven't really been that great. Like we thought we were free and we weren't. So I think it feels less free now because the authoritarianism has just gained more ground in our day-to-day life. And we're also in the situation where, post-COVID, post-lockdowns, post just runaway inflation right now, like we're experiencing that 70s,
malaise.
It's worse than that. It's like they call it malaise. I feel like that word is way too
that was
tame.
the 70s. That was a 70s word.
I know, but imagine being in the 70s where you have double-digit interest rates and double-digit inflation. Is that malaise, or is that like the roller coaster from hell where you're like headed down it? Like, that's not malaise. That's, oh my God. Like, imagine trying to go fill up your gas tank and you have to wait an hour and you'll be lucky to get a few gallons. Imagine that.
Yeah.
That's what was going on in the 70s. And, the fact that there's a couple of things in my area, there were no flights out of John Wayne Airport this morning. And there's no storm here. There's no reason for that except
Mhm.
something is effed up in the whole
Yeah.
infrastructure of this company. There were no flights.
Like suddenly we don't have the technology or something. Of course, that's
And,
not it.
and a couple of days ago, a friend of mine's kid had a fever, and her husband was going to every drugstore in a 50-mile radius, could not find children's cold medicine, Tylenol, ibuprofen, Dayquil, NyQuil, Mucinex, like no kids medicine at all in any of the stores. And if that isn't like a supply, I mean, I realize there's storms and stuff going on, which probably affected it, but what are we, like apes? You know?
Yeah.
So anyway, I think like malaise is not the word, but things suck. And so it's scary and it's kind of freaky. And that's what I talked about last week. So what is your take on that?
Well, you alluded to it already, which is, you were talking about the idea of chaos, the Jordan Peterson distinction. And what I was saying is before you can fix a problem, you have to know you have a problem. And for those of us who've kind of like been studying deep politics, probably for at least I have since the early 90s and the Clintons, have kind of known the depths of corruption that exist across different agencies and different areas of the country. And I feel that the last 1 or 2 years has been an unmasking where this stuff has been going on, and I'll give you a couple examples in a second, but this stuff has been going on so deeply and it's become so entrenched for so many years and decades that most people don't even know that it's going on, to the point where if I had told you a couple of years ago, hey, the CIA worked with organized crime to assassinate a president, and they systematically killed whistleblowers to suppress it, and there was an Operation Mockingbird, which co-opted the media, like William Paley at CBS and Salzberger at the New York Times and Henry Luce at Time Life and the Graham family at Washington Post, and all mainstream media outlets were essentially like propaganda arms for the CIA and the deep state, or that the FBI's actually not just suddenly fallen into corruption, but has been a corrupt organization really since its inception under the rule of J. Edgar Hoover, who was famously compromised by the mafia because he was a transvestite, or that, drug running and human trafficking, blackmail, military contracts have kind of been the currency of the federal government, or that there's a global health cabal that works with domestic regulatory agencies in the United States through distributions of grants and regulatory power, have corrupted the pharmaceutical industries and researchers and medical systems, and that this has a massive impact on our health and how medicine and how medical treatments are thought about throughout the world, or that Hollywood is an engine for propaganda or for trafficking young children and women, and that sexual deviancy is like the currency of
our A-lister entertainment.
And politics in general,
and
or
politics,
through like
and all the top. That is the one that really freaks me out. Actually, I didn't know that all the top power centers are disgusting sexual deviants. I thought, well, sure, there's some, but oh my God. Yeah. What we've learned is that in the last couple of years is that our conspiracy theory friend, the one who's weird and, you think, oh my God, is just more well-read than you.
Yeah, that's
right?
Exactly what I'm saying. And, the usage of, like, obviously sexual blackmail is, time immemorial, but certainly the way in which it's been used and sort of commoditized, through the relationships that, the Kennedys had, and through the homosexuality that was considered perverse in the 50s and 60s, and the way it was used to co-opt politicians and agencies. And then,
so it's not new.
This is not new. Obviously, this is not, none of this is new. This is all just being sort of like the rank and file, and like people like me would sort of like knew about this or knew about like the Clintons or the,
I
all
think I
this
knew
stuff.
about half of it. I don't think I knew.
I
I
don't,
don't. I'm not as well read as you, and I don't. I didn't know a lot of it.
but that's my
I
point
knew
is like
about half
now
of
I
it.
could tell you, or I
Yeah.
could show you, hey, do you know that this happened? And whereas a few years ago you'd be like, okay, Doug, what,
Well, but
whatever.
it's worse
Now
than
you'd be
that.
like, oh my God.
It's worse than that because now we're at the point where we'll believe anything. Now you could say to me, the whole thing is run by aliens from like the Alpha Qatari
Exactly.
system. And I'd be like, well, maybe.
It's possible.
Right? I don't know.
Like
Obviously, I don't know shit.
I think I saw an art. Yeah, no, totally right. And I think that again, until and a lot of the sort of like underlying propaganda has been about like these supposedly ideological divisions, which are real between like the Republicans and the Democrats. Like that's what's really driving like this Manichean black and white these divisions that are out there. And really when you start to look through this and you start to realize, oh, wait a second, maybe it's not all ideological. Maybe it's more like there's this establishment globalist
Yeah,
enterprise
it's just power.
that's corrupt and
wars. It's
power, and like
factions of
these divisions between us are sort of used by these people in power to
yeah.
keep us at each other's throats. And look, there are real ideological divisions, don't get me wrong, but I mean the real power, where the money is, where the trillions of dollars are flowing,
I was
is
saying
not
last
that.
week that here I have like Elon Musk, who's totally opposed to me politically. I am a libertarian, free market, capitalism girl. He voted for Biden in 2020. He's a South African socialist do-gooder, and yet I feel like he's on my side.
Mm-hmm.
Like ideologically, we couldn't be more different. The difference is I think these are ideological differences, and I think there's psychological differences. The difference is he's honest and clean and like believes in people and wants humanity to do well. That's it. Like that is, if I have that in common with you, we're on the same side.
Yeah.
Everything else, like all the details of how to run a society are out the window. Like those things don't seem to matter right now. It really gets down to like postmodernism. That's where the ideology does come out. It is epistemological. It's like, am I going to commit to reality, or am I going to allow these lies and these just all the fakeness to obscure what I know?
Yeah.
Or what's true. Anyway,
yeah, well, but it also points, it points to two things. And, I don't know if you want to move on from this, but I was going to say that it points to why I think the man of the year is Elon Musk. And it also points to, I think, a potential solution to a lot of this, or at least the beginning of a solution. And the reason why I said Elon Musk is because this guy is an absolute hero. I mean, this guy
100%.
basically just pissed away maybe 40 or 50 billion dollars just to unravel,
to save Western civilization,
and to expose, to tell us the truth about what's really going on. And every day now we're finding that what Sonny and I's worst fears were, which were really bad. I don't even know if I understood. I mean, the FBI was like paying Twitter to like censor.
Yeah, I didn't.
Like what?
I didn't think the FBI was paying Twitter. And you know what? I didn't. It's just amazing how people will make excuses for this still. Then you just know, like, I'm done. I mean, if you are making excuses for the FBI paying Twitter, or this one thing we've learned is that the FBI and the CIA are embedded in these companies. There's dozens of employees at the top level that are ex-CIA and ex-FBI. And I was like, oh, really? Oh, really? I was a CIA operative for 30 years and now I work for Twitter as a head of trust and safety, which is like the most Orwellian departmental name. Trust and safety.
Trust and safety.
You.
And
like,
of
leave
course,
me alone. Get out of my don't safety me. And these are guys out of the CIA. So like, I'm supposed to believe they're not like dual citizens here. And you do have Republicans now saying, no, they are, even though they're ex-CIA, they're Americans and they have a right to, have their opinion and push that at a private company if they're hired to do that. It's like, are you kidding? Like, how, I mean, these are the people who will be lined up in front of the pit with a gun to their head and they'll still think that
these are private contractors these are private contractors running the concentration camps. So it's okay.
It's fine. Right? Oh my God. So
like the stuff that he's revealing and exposing, which is almost unheard of. The fact that this sort of like dump of corrupt activity and the true censorship that's been taking place, where government agencies are embedded in big tech, throughout big tech, and to the point where someone like a Tucker Carlson can go on Fox News and say, yeah, like the CIA like helped assassinate Kennedy. And people are like, oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, this is like a big time sea change that I haven't seen this in 50 years. I mean, this stuff has been going on for decades and decades. This didn't start yesterday or in the last 5 years.
We just weren't as free as we thought. I think everyone's got to come to terms with that. And I actually think it makes you feel a little bit better, because now what we're seeing is not that we're getting less and less free. We're seeing that we're becoming more and more aware of how unfree we have been.
Yes, that's exactly my point.
And how there are now new developments with the internet and things like that are actually better than how it was even 30 years ago. 30 years ago, you had 3 stations and you were only allowed ABC, CBS, and NBC, New York Times, Washington Post. Like, that's all you got. And maybe they had to hide. They hid more that they were dishonest than they do today, because they had less like physical power. Maybe. I don't really know why they were hiding then and they're not now. Maybe because the internet has exposed them, or it's allowed other people to compete with them, and they've had to be more overt.
Oh my God,
shutting it down, and as a result, we now can see what's going on.
No, the CIA. Sorry, go ahead.
That's what it is, right? It's just that they've had to work harder to keep it a secret, and so it's more obvious.
Well, yeah, I think this. How easy would it be to control a handful of newspapers and a couple of TV stations? I mean, I was reading a story today about like the CIA director used to call. They would call the publishers of these places and yell at them, like, "No, you got to do." I mean, it was very easy to control these outlets, and also, think about like Hollywood's and the American movie industry and the level of propaganda just around American. I would call it American imperialism. I mean, it's the good guys, America's always the good guys, and our military is always the good guys, and the CIA are the good. We could glorify CIA and intelligence and this kind of stuff. I mean, and when you've allowed the system to become so rotten that there is no oversight of it anymore, and it's just up to the most corrupt actors to seize control of trillions of dollars in funding and this gravy train of the federal government, like. At least now we know, all right, this is what we're up against. Yeah. And everyone, like, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is like really happening. This is really what's out there. And so how do you fight it? Not like 30 years ago, it was like, well, we just got to elect more Republicans.
We just have to elect a Republican. We have to,
And here, Mitch McConnell is the chief presider over the spoils of the federal budget, to his own self-interest. And so this is not a purely, I would say the people today that are most, on a side that would tend to fight against this are a certain handful of Republicans that are out there. I have no doubt that, DeSantis will probably be co-opted by this system if, once he starts. Again, I don't want to get back into that argument, but I'm almost coming more to your argument now, Sonny, of I don't know if I want DeSantis in the federal realm anymore, because
what can he do?
And
what I said last week, it's like, there's no draining the swamp from the federal government.
They're going to investigate themselves.
You can issue all the orders you want, and they'll be just like, no,
Yeah, we're not doing that.
So, which is
So
what
you
they
need a
did to
coalition
Trump.
of states, right?
You need a coalition of you need the states to nullify, or you need a strong man to go in and just fire everybody and like physically close down the offices with the military. I mean, which is like advocating a pure revolution at this point.
Mhm.
So I don't see why we would put our best men in the federal government. But it does make sense to put a symbol of the rebellion in the most powerful. It makes sense to put Trump there. We don't need him to be like someone who can figure out Washington politics. Like what? I mean, it's not like he can just be more clever than Mitch McConnell. It's too far gone. So anyway, I agree with you. Elon Musk is the man of 2020. What he has done, 2022, what he has done, the money he's spent, the personal risk he's taken, it's unreal. It's a George Washington level
exactly
heroism.
Yeah.
And he reminds me of George Washington because he is that man who's like doesn't really want power, but he just feels like he has to do it because who's going to do it? The kind of guy who, when offered the kingdom, says no. When it's all said and done, no, I don't want to live in a kingdom. What I want to do is set us up for success.
Yeah.
And that is totally his attitude when you see him put out that poll saying, okay, who wants me to step down? Actually, though,
I don't want to run this shit. It's like Washington didn't want to command the army. Like,
no,
okay, you want me to leave my plantation in Virginia and go to Boston and like fight the British? Like, I don't want to do that. He didn't
want to do it. He wanted to be home on his farm with his wife. He had enough to do. So yeah, I think Elon Musk is George Washington level hero, and we have got to start thinking of it like that. There will be statues to this man 100 years from now if we win this. Okay, before we move on to just kind of listing the important stories of the year, I wanted to start with one of the most important stories, which is that I did my first comedy video in like 7 years.
Yes.
Really, it was just an excuse to wear my Queen of England Halloween costume.
That's kind of what I thought.
But I'm just going to share it with you guys here on the podcast because it's fun and it's only 30 seconds. Let's see. Share screen. I just think I have the funniest expression.
Hello, my name is Lady English Britain Mount Meat Pie. Hi, where are you from? I'm from New York. Oh, where do you come from? Well, if you must know, Buffalo. But where are you from, like, originally? What is the meaning of this? Well, I mean, like, where were you born? Well, I was born in Hertfordshire. Now we're getting somewhere. Well, I mean... Hello, my name is...
I just think that's funny. Like, can you imagine a white person getting offended about being like asked, where are you from? You know, like she's so British.
Or she's pretending. I thought she was she pretending to be British, like the woman who was pretending to be African?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, take it
That's
whatever
what I thought
want,
it was.
But, like, I'm thinking Lady
was,
Susan Hussey is so British. Like, she's literally she dressed like the Queen of England with the matching hat and suit and everything. And imagine if the roles were reversed and like Lady Susan Hussey wasn't. My original concept was that Lady Susan Hussey is in Africa, and some very African person is saying to her, well, but you're not from Africa. You're like, where are you from? And she's like, oh, you know,
how dare
like
you?
I'm so offended. But then I realized that to do the African part, I would have to actually like do blackface. And so I'm like, I can't do that.
See, the way I was thinking of it was this is an English woman.
Yeah, she's an American woman.
This is an American woman
who's
pretending to be the Queen of England.
Yeah, exactly.
And then someone's like, well, you're from England, right? And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm from Buffalo.
Yeah, right.
Like, how dare you?
Yeah,
how
exactly.
dare you accuse me of being from England?
Exactly. I mean, if you're going to dress like a Brit, you're going to get accused of being a Brit. If you dress like an African, you're going to get accused of being an African.
But not just dress like a Brit, like literally dress like the Queen of England and speak in a fake English accent.
Right.
How dare you? You know?
Yeah.
No,
my commitment to 2023 is to do more comedy. And I think I just have to lighten my mood. And I was thinking about like Twitter, and I just recently got on Twitter. Really, you can follow me there at Sunny Loman. And I don't really fit in to how Twitter works. I don't want to fight with people. I don't want to insult people. I don't want to lecture people. I don't want to make these 140 character clever pronouncements. Like I don't know. That's just isn't me. I feel like a dink. I feel like I come across as like a, you know, like snotty. I don't know. Maybe I don't.
But that's what Twitter is.
Yeah.
Twitter is meant to be snotty because you got to make quips.
Right.
And you're fighting against 17
I would rather
billion
be
people.
like Mark Twain kind of quippy, or I mean, to me, it's all right. If I can't be funny, I should just keep my mouth shut on Twitter. And I haven't followed that rule. It's just something I'm thinking lately is that if I'm going to take the time to write a tweet, it should be a joke. It should be a joke, because that could be my contribution to the world is humor, and it's something that is so important to persevering through this mess. And we do have to realize that we have to persevere, that, being like, oh, I'm just going to put my head down and, it's too big a problem. It's too far gone. It's like, oh, it would take too long to fix it. It's too much, that's really kind of bullshit. That's how they win.
Yeah.
If you flee to the country, you leave the city and flee to the country, and then eventually they come and murder you on your estate, you freaking asked for that. You allowed them to solidify their power base. And I realized, like, you had a much easier decade out on your freaking country farm than you did fighting the battle in the city. Like, you chose a short range thought. You said, I'm going to go to the country where life is easy. I'm going to have some freaking sheep and provide for myself and not have to depend on these psychos. And I get that. I mean, I so get that urge. I have that urge every day. And people are like, why are you still in California? Well, I don't know. I mean, I like it here, but why not fight here? Why not? Until I can't. I don't really understand the running thing. And even in our brains, we're running. We just want to put it aside. We don't want to watch the news. And I feel the similar urges. So I think we have to find a way to stay in the fight, but do it in such a way that it doesn't, destroy our motivation. Yeah. And humor really helps me with that. I love watching the right-sided comedians, and a lot of comedians are flipping. When you see like Russell Brand and is it Jimmy Dore?
Yeah.
And you just
Bill Maher.
Bill Maher even. Yeah. There are a lot of comedians who are.
If you're the left and you've lost Jimmy Dore and Bill Maher,
Joe Rogan, for God's
Joe
sake.
Rogan, you've
He's
lost all these people.
Bridget Feisty, I think I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I mean, it's just one comedian after another now, except for a handful of assholes.
A comment on what you're saying too is
Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle,
yeah.
And Ricky Gervais. I mean, we're talking A-list comedians that do not do this woke stuff and have talked against it. So,
it's hard to believe we're losing, or we feel like we're losing. Here's the thing is what I want to say is, first of all, point one was just because, you recognize and we're unmasking this deep power structure. It doesn't mean that I'm saying that it's futile. What I'm saying is, no, this now points to how to fight it, because now we know it exists. And there's a way, like just sending the good guy to Washington is probably not going to drain the swamp, like you're saying. The second thing I wanted to say, though, is that rather than see a political fight as a fight between either I'm mired in tyranny or I'm in utopia, and those are the two things. So I'm either miserable and depressed and stressed out, or we get the perfect society.
Right. I don't think that's such a good point.
I don't think that's the right way to ever think about this. Not, first of all, because it's not true. And secondly, because it'll exacerbate your stress and anxiety. the fact is that we have to fight for human beings, and individuals have had to fight for freedom since we've been in a cave. And, certainly in the last few hundred years since the United States, fought off the British Empire, from the second the ink was dry, from the American Revolution, there's been a battle and a fight and huge political battles, culminating in a effing civil war, which
right.
killed 700,000 people. I mean, and then we had to fight world wars, and we've had to fight. And so the lesson of that is, this is the human condition. The human condition is, you don't just get to be free if you want to live in a society, because there's always bad people, and there's always people that want to control you and want to control everybody and want power over you. So you got to always fight. You always got to be fighting this. And the key, in my view, though, is not to get mired in this philosophy that because I have to fight and things are not perfect, my life has to be miserable. There's nothing I can do. Obviously, in many ways, things were way worse in the United States at various times in our history. So we've actually got amazing technology. We've got tens of millions of people who have woken up and are on our side. And we've got a lot of really good things going for us. And you can live a great life and just see civics and civic engagement as a part of life, just like going to the doctor or getting your oil changed. I mean, you got to show up at meetings and stuff like that and always be watching out. And some can do more than others. Some are in a position where they have the motivation, the ambition, and maybe the resources to do more, like an Elon Musk. There are people like you, Sonny, that enjoy the fight a little bit and are humorous and have the ability to do that. Some people, it's just write a letter and say, hey, Congressman, I know you kind of knowing it's probably not going to do a whole lot.
Or show up
I'm
at
outraged
your
by this
school board meeting or your city councilman. I think that is something that we, and perhaps it's been done to us in a way. I mean, if for the last 60 years, we have been somehow, this country's, we weren't free. Somehow simultaneously we were kind of comfortable and also not doing the civic engagement of our grandparents. I don't really understand how that happened. I mean, they used to have this attitude that you have to show up in your community and be a part of it and, give charity and be a member of society civically. And that it was their duty as citizens to do that. And our parents and us, we don't do that.
And to be educated, to understand how government works, and to
it's kind
that
of
was
weird.
The whole idea of the founders was we need an educated, vigorous population.
Purposely? Was it purposely oh no, you don't need to show up, and somehow, I don't know. It was just, I know that my grandparents were way more involved. And so, if we have to be now, and like you said, now our generation and regards this as we will fight, and then we will get back to this place where we don't have to fight, where we don't have to be involved, where we can just live our lives and be left alone. And I think what you're saying is that that does not exist. And it's this illusion that we've come to believe that it does exist. And yet what has happened in the last several decades that we haven't been engaged is, we get what we deserve in a way. We have not been engaged.
Yeah.
And we better get engaged, and moving to the country and buying ranch land. Okay, do that, but don't stop the battle. I mean, you have to have be part of some strategic fight. And like you said, it doesn't have to be a misery. Do something you like, do something that motivates you. So,
yeah.
All right. So that's kind of, I think I promise to do more comedy, and I will get more disciplined about that. I think my health is getting to the point that I can do that. So, all right, I'm just going to list the stories, and then you go back and, you pick out and tell me what you think about these.
Okay.
Okay. So it'd be the Kanye Rebellion, which I think is important in the arts and Hollywood arena. I feel like he's exposed some things in people. Tom Cruise and Top Gun 2. I kind of think that was an important moment for Americans. The death of Queen Elizabeth is important for the world. Let's see, who else did I? Oh, Roe v. Wade being overturned, just legally. I think it's an important debate, states versus federal government. It's the old debate, federalism versus, what do you call that other side?
Yeah, nationalism.
Anti-federalism. The extradition of Julian Assange, that'll be kind of an interesting thing. I don't know if that event in itself was so important, but journalism is what's going on in media, and journalism is really important.
Yeah.
And Glenn Greenwald, Julian Assange, all the independent journalists, Tim Pool, everything we're seeing online, all of these just masses and masses of independent journalists kind of defeating the cool kids who now don't look like the cool kids. They look like the jerk, snotty, rich kids running for office of your local high school. And the new up and coming journalists are the cool kids taking them on.
Well, look at like the Twitter files with Barry Weiss and Matt Taibbi.
Yeah.
And
as against the
Schellenberger.
Lorenzo chick. And
you know,
and
Taylor
those,
Lorenz or whatever her name was.
They're so gross.
Yeah. What an unmasking there, because all those people are liberals.
Yeah.
And it's like, you've got this, you've got like the true classic liberals, like that. Hey, we want to expose the truth, like the Glenn Greenwalds and the Matt Taibbi type people, against these like mainstream hacks who have these like sinecures at these mainstream organizations who are literally attacking them for
revealing
exposing
what
the
happened.
truth.
Yeah. They're not even commenting on it. They're just saying, here are the emails, here are the facts. And they're like, oh, Matt Taibbi is a child molester. It's like, what?
How dare you expose this truth to us? Like, you should be like, that to me shows the real divergence, like globally, between like people I can disagree with who are ideologically maybe more Democrat or whatever than I am, and the difference between like the globalists and like classical liberals, people that just want to be left alone and want to be able to think freely and debate freely and control their government and control their own lives. And and the people who are statists, who are happy to be lackeys for the deep state and for these power centers that just want a good job and to be famous and be on television. And it's so disgusting. But this is part of the unmasking, as we're finally seeing this, because those people, like, think of like the Walter Cronkites and the Dan Rathers and those kinds of hacks, who historically they were both
heads.
They were the mainstream media and they were the credible truth tellers. And now it's like, no. Those are the hacks. And now the Glenn Greenwalds and those types of, those are the real journalists. And so now people can see this division.
Yeah. And it existed. I think it's just so important to remind ourselves this has been going on for decades. And now we get to see that and laugh at them and see more and more people taking the side of more and more liberals and Democrat, forget the political distinctions, people of all ideologies taking the side of freedom, at least freedom of speech. So even in Europe, you have Marine Le Pen taking more power. You have Giorgia Morconi elected in Italy. Maloney. So then there's the Ukraine situation, which is just a boondoggle. Like, it's this massive $150 billion boondoggle, and they know it, and it's exposed. And McConnell's like, well, I think Ukraine is the number one priority for the Republican Party. So he's just like saying, well, taking money from the taxpayers and putting it in my pocket is my number one priority, and those of my colleagues. And is that a problem with that? I love how they can pretend like it's virtuous, but we all know it is just mass theft, grand larceny.
And I heard today that Zelensky, the article was like, are they just like punching us in the face with like, this is like such an Onion or Babylon Bee type article. Zelensky hired BlackRock now to advise them on restructuring the Ukrainian economy. So you got this like
sure, of course,
ESG liberal.
Now you will hire us to restructure your economy, and we will take some of that 50 billion. I mean, total money laundering. It is pure. Yeah. And it's so overt. It's almost ridiculous.
And yet, remember, Trump couldn't get $5 billion to build a border
billion
wall
for our own freaking border. And in Arizona, they put the containers up, and now they're being ordered to pull them down by the Biden administration. So the border was my other story, just this wide open border. We have no border. We have no country. The earlier in 2022 was the big trucker rebellion in Canada. That was huge.
Yeah.
Think about that. Think about the Dutch rebellion. There are a lot of people out there who know what's going on. They know what's going on. They're awake, and maybe they aren't winning yet, but Trudeau is lucky that he didn't get yanked physically out of office. And I think the only reason he didn't, first of all, he came down hard, but I'm trying to think of the course of events, because at a point when I thought, oh my God, he's surrounded, he could actually be physically taken out of office right now by these people. And I thought that was a potential. Something happened. I think it was Ukraine. I think that the news just immediately flipped to war, like a war kind of news, and you stopped hearing about the truckers, and everything just fizzled away.
Well, they started confiscating their bank accounts, though. I mean, they started getting really draconian.
And they started to be completely ignored by the media in favor of the war in Ukraine. You had the rise of DeSantis this year with the "Don't Say Gay" stuff. You had the Amber Heard guilty of basically being everything she accused Johnny Depp of, which I think was significant because it's the end of Me Too. Now we've seen this high profile thing where, a man can actually be lied about and abused as well. So let's get back to due process. Right? I mean,
yeah, that's a good point.
I feel like, it was a pendulum swing back to where it should be, which is, just because it's a woman, you don't just believe her and all these stupid things that we've been hearing. I think Fetterman being elected to the Senate is kind of a moment. It just goes to show you that it doesn't matter who you elect.
Yeah.
You have literally a retard. I don't even want to say Neanderthal looking, but like the ugliest, sloppiest, stupidest man in America got elected to the U.S. Senate. Do you really think it matters?
No.
Yeah. Those are my stories. J6 hearings, I guess. I think that's just, the J6 hearing was all a propaganda thing to try to give certain people a justification for continuing to be shitty. And then for the coming arrest of Donald Trump, which will come in early 2023.
Yeah, I think that's
my list.
Yeah, I would say that along those lines, I would add the raid on Mar-a-Lago.
Yes.
I'd say like this ramp up of these deep state tactics to intimidate and prosecute dissent through the Trump raid, the other raids, and the other arrests of some of his colleagues, the trade representative and some other congressmen who had his stuff confiscated. That as well, and I would say that plus the J6 hearings and everything else, which are going to go out the window now that the Republicans are going to control the House of Representatives. But I think the lack of a red wave was an interesting development, because in November, if you had told me, I really thought there was going to be a massive Republican sweep in November,
I did,
and that was predicted. And I think two things may have happened. One was the extent of election corruption
it's
is beyond
massive.
is beyond now. And so I think that accounts for a lot of it. I think the
Yeah.
second thing, though, is that the Republicans need to do some soul searching. And I'm seeing it locally in work that I'm involved in, where there is definitely a rhino versus radical Republican, whatever you want to call it, more radical like people versus the rhino establishment.
Mm-hmm.
And the Mitch McConnells, I guess, versus like, say, the Ron DeSantis.
Or the Marjorie Taylor Greene type.
The Marjorie, yeah, that's probably a better example. The MJT versus Mitch McConnell dynamic that is going on everywhere, and I think that was a big reason why there wasn't more of a wave, in addition to the election corruption.
Sure, I mean, I guess it's divided, but I didn't think that there would be a red wave, because I'm like, what has changed from 2020? Like, we know what happened there. Nothing really that much has changed. I mean, maybe in some small districts there's been some securing and some changes, but no massive, like, you still have these machines. I was a little surprised about the Carrie Lake thing, because I just kind of thought she is going to have so much support. It's going to be really hard to defeat her, but they figured it out. They just screwed over every on the day voter. They're like, oh, what do Republicans do? They vote on the day. Okay, then we'll just make it impossible on the day. If you didn't vote early, you couldn't vote. Ooh, that's clever. You know, they knew what to do. Chat GPT is an interesting story. I think that's going to be more of a 2023 story, but I can't wait to play around with that. I haven't yet, but I'm wondering if it can...
What? What's Chat GPT?
Chat GPT is that AI writer. It's the AI.
Oh,
you go and you say, write an article about this using this style, or, you can give it like inputs and commands, and it will create a piece of writing for you. And some of what I've seen people produce with prompts, basic prompts, has been pretty remarkable. I am interested in trying it out and I'll report back on that, because I think that's really fascinating. I think I'm trying to think if there are any other stories. I think that's it for my, let's do predictions. So 2023, we predict Donald Trump will be arrested. We predict what else?
Well, should we follow the Dmitry Medvedev predictions, or should we make our own?
Okay, I'll read those. So this is the former Russian. I shared this with Doug, and we got a good laugh out of it. The former Russian puppet
president,
Dmitry Medvedev. How do you even say that? He came out with some predictions. On the New Year's Eve, everybody's into making predictions. Here's our humble contribution. 1, oil price will rise to $150 a barrel, and gas price will top $5 per 1,000 cubic meters. I have no context for that. What does that mean? I don't know.
Well, right now crude's 80. It had gotten up to 120 at the peak. At the peak of the madness at the war, the start of the war, it was 120. Okay. So that was like, oh my God, it's 120. And that's when gas was like $5 or $6 a gallon. Okay. And now it's gone back to 80, and gas is probably $3-4 a gallon. So yeah, he thinks it's going to go right back up and blow through.
That. Okay. The UK will rejoin the EU. That's possible. I could see that happening. But I don't know about in 2023, because it would take a while for that to occur. Did they even really Brexit? I mean, what's happened is they had an agreement, but they haven't actually disconnected. The EU.
Hey, whatever happened with Brexit? Remember, we were like, in a couple of weeks they'll be out, and then in a couple of months, and then like I just forgot about it. Did they ever Brexit?
Yeah, they Brexited, but it's sort of like the deal was they're still doing what the EU wants. I mean, they have a little more independence than they did, But the problem is that all the people at the top are still just working together and doing whatever. You know, the people who are the leaders are beholden to the WEF and the EU. And so they're just continuing to do the same thing. They don't actually have to have a government connection to continue to just do the bidding of the.
So here's a better question, Sonny. Did the United States ever Brexit?
Right.
Like we're still under the thumb of WEF, right? And the Europeans.
And Canada.
It seems like
absolutely. Okay. And the EU. Okay. So the UK will rejoin the EU. The EU will collapse after the UK's return. Euro will drop out of use as the former EU currency. That's a bold prediction. Poland and Hungary will occupy western regions of the formerly existing Ukraine. I can kind of believe that. I think Ukraine could end up completely gone with portions of it owned by not Russia, but other Eastern Bloc countries, right? That might be the best outcome. We got to get rid of this corrupt country.
I don't know. Ways. Well, Ukraine. No, I think Ukraine's going to survive.
Don't we want regime change in Ukraine?
To what? The next guy?
I know. I'm joking. As if Zelensky is the operator, right?
Yeah, Thomas Jefferson's coming any day now in Ukraine and Russia and Hungary.
Right.
I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah. I don't know. I think Ukraine's going to probably beat the Russians back at some point. The Russians are going to find a way out of it.
Do you think that they'll do a deal at the table? That's kind of what I think is coming. Is they're going to, okay, we've done what we can here. Let's let Russia and Ukraine make a deal now.
No, because as long as the United States is fighting a proxy war and giving them money, I think they'll keep going. And I think at some point, Russia's just this will just slowly die out. There won't be a truce. I think the Russians will just stop, probably.
Okay.
Not quite sure.
Number 5, the Fourth Reich will be created, encompassing the territory of Germany and its satellites, Poland, the Baltic states, Chechnya, Slovakia, the Kiev Republic, and other outcasts. Okay.
What the fuck is that?
That is, I don't know enough about European politics to.
That sounds like kind of a paranoid, like Putin level, like delusion. Like,
yes. Like Germany
we're fighting the Nazis. We're
going to take over our border. And yeah.
That's a delusion.
War will break out between France and the Fourth Reich. Europe will be divided, Poland repartitioned in the process. So they're just trying to scare France there. Northern Ireland will separate from the UK and join the Republic of Ireland. I don't think that's going to happen. I think if anything, Scotland will break off. But not in 2023. These things take a little more time. Civil war will break out in the U.S., California and Texas becoming independent states as a result. Texas and Mexico will form an allied state. Elon Musk will win the presidential election in a number of states, which after the new civil wars end will have been given to the GOP.
Well, Elon Musk can't run for president because I think he was born in South Africa. Right?
Under a new country, he could. All the largest stock markets and financial activity will leave the U.S. and Europe and move to Asia. What do you think of that, Doug?
No, I don't think so.
Are any of these even worth reading? They're kind of all a little nuts.
They get crazier and crazier.
The Bretton Woods system of monetary management will collapse. I don't know what that is. Leading to the IMF and World Bank crash. Euro and dollar will stop circulating as the global reserve currencies. Digital fiat currencies will be actively used instead. I don't know if this is even worth reading. It's crazy.
Well, I think, no, that's not that crazy. There's a move. The central banks are trying to move us into digital fiat currencies. And I think that's a real push that is like 100% the hill to die on, that and free speech, because once the government controls digital currency and controls your ability to access money.
Yes, I totally agree.
We're done.
I mean, when we see PayPal taking people's money, PayPal.
Yeah.
If we don't like what you think, we're going to just hold $2,500 of your money. But they've backed off on that, but I was reading the whole saga and they are actually doing that to people. So they made that an official policy, but without it being an official policy, which they've now backed down on, they're actually doing that to people where you can't get your funds. There's a delay. There's some time, maybe it's millions.
Well, we've seen
And
what
they're
the left
canceling
will do
people's
when they
accounts
control.
and they're wrecking their businesses just because they don't like them ideologically. So PayPal is already doing that. We've seen MasterCard do that. I
Mhm.
mean,
Banks
of
all over the country have
course.
done it.
Of course. Oh, yeah. Bank of America has done it. Of course, a digital currency would be used in the same way. Come on. I mean, of course. That is
So
not
that
even close to a conspiracy theory. By the way, I just want to say quickly, Elon Musk's response to Dmitry Medvedev's predictions is, LOL, remind me of this in 1 year.
it's funny. Yeah, I think politically, those are the things you got to really watch out for are the digital central bank currencies. And that's the big push. I think the exposure of Fauci is becoming very interesting. This latest Twitter dump was related to Fauci. I think if the Republicans have any gumption in the House, they will hold two massive investigations. One should be on the Twitter, on the infiltration of big tech by the deep state, and the second investigation should be on Fauci and the NIH. And by the way, did you hear the story today that his wife is the head of the ethics panel at the CDC?
Oh, I knew that. That came out.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
came out a year and a half ago. 2 years ago, at least.
So,
Yeah. It's all corrupt. I mean, it's all just
Okay.
bullshit.
So, but anyways, I think that an investigation of the COVID, if the Republicans are going to do anything, they should have a public investigation of the government's COVID response, and particularly the relationship of big tech to the NIH and the COVID narrative, and getting to the truth of like the gain of function research, which we all know was funded by Fauci
and it's still
sent
being
to this
funded.
lab.
It's still being funded and still being done
Through Eco Alliance and all stuff. So all that's got to be accounted for. And I think that this Twitter stuff, I mean, if they're going to do two things, even we know nothing's going to happen. We know, we know no one will probably be held accountable, but
I
just
think that's
having
really
those
important.
having those trials or those investigations be made somewhat public has to happen. It has to happen.
It's a little public and it's a little bit more official, credible. Like J6, it's ridiculous, but the fact that it has credibility, it's official, it does have an impact. We can play the same games. I mean, in the sense that obviously what we're talking about is real crime, but our hearings, even though they go nowhere, might be just as important. I think that what you said is really important. Do not look for accountability. That's like a French Revolution mentality, kind of, we cannot, and honestly, this early, we can't expect it. We cannot expect accountability of these bad guys. All we can do is try to push them out and take more ground. So if what you need to do mentally in 2023 is realign what you consider a victory. I think it's not why isn't we like have these pie in the sky. I want to see Fauci arrested and I want to see Hillary arrested, lock her up. I want to, okay, yes, wet dream. But what's realistic in terms of gaining ground against this tyrannical monster that we're up against? And recognize your victories.
What I'd like to see is, because the Congress has been so feckless and unable to actually hold anybody accountable because they're part of the corruption, I'd like to see a coalition of red states hold an investigation at like the state AG level, like they did with Missouri's Eric Schmidt and a couple of other states on the Twitter stuff, where they were able to actually get discovery in federal court. Like you could have like Florida, Texas, all those states, those AGs file in federal court, file some sort of lawsuit to, to officially prosecute whatever violations they can find on behalf of these tech companies and on behalf of these federal operators that were embedded. And I don't know, maybe they need to just at least invent some state statutes that say anyone, any tech company that's sort of like embed with these federal agencies, that's grounds for a civil lawsuit on behalf of our citizens of our state.
Yeah.
Like, you are violating
This
your
is why
terms of
state
service,
leadership
blah, 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 blah,
manages
blah,
so
blah.
much
Yeah.
right now, is that we can do a lot with states. And I predict in 2023 that Texas and Arizona are going to protect their own border with their own military and their own, fences of some kind. That's going to happen. People are going to get out there and protect the freaking border because they're so personally impacted by the porous border, with just, criminals and vagrants pouring in.
But do you see that the New York
cities.
mayor is declaring a state of emergency from just the immigrants
They're
that
being
Texas
buzzed.
is sending to
Yes.
them? So
Yes.
what does that tell you? Like,
Yes.
is that realistically? I mean, what a brilliant political move. They got to keep doing that. I'd keep sending
they have
them
to keep
to Kamala
sending them
Harris's house.
Absolutely. And make these Democrats have to acknowledge that it's a problem when you get 1,000, just 1,000, when El Paso's had 150,000. Imagine 1,000 and how it cripples an area. So this is just, if you are still a libertarian and being like, oh, open borders are fine. I mean, I don't even know what to say to you. If you can't see that, practically speaking, no, they're not fine. They're actually murderous and destructive policies to the good people who live in an area, to just let anyone in. Oh my God. Streams and streams of people destroying entire areas of this country and people's livelihoods, and the governments and the businesses are being destroyed. So anyway,
But that's not an invasion. Ukraine, when Russia comes across and takes over, that's an invasion.
well, it's
But
because they don't
when
have
foreign
tanks and
countries
guns.
come here, yeah,
they just come and take all the money and squat in the buildings, take the property. Like, they're taking the property by force just because they have masses of people, and good people have to leave if they don't want to be raped and beaten up and like physically robbed. So how is that different? I don't, it's not different. Okay, we're out of time. That is our show for today. Do you have any? We're taking a month off. What's our parting wisdom?
just make civics, balance your life, make civics, and just do something. It doesn't have, you don't have to achieve perfection in anything in life. You don't have to achieve perfection in politics, but every marginal step is a big help. And I think when you do anything, if a congressman gets 7 letters and you're one of them, that gives moral support to people who are looking for an excuse to maybe take your side. And so any little thing you can do is marginally very helpful. So don't ever dismiss even small action. Don't feel it's futile, and don't feel like unless you achieve perfection, you failed. You haven't. Like, that's just part of life. You got to fight for your freedom.
And to stay motivated, pick things that you enjoy doing. Pick things that fuel you, rather than, maybe it is getting together with like-minded people so that you're fueled by the community to do something rather than just on your own. Maybe it's writing because you like writing. Maybe it's, whatever it is that you
or just
enjoy.
give money to a good organization that will fight for you. Not libertarian organizations, in my opinion, or objectivist organizations, but give to actual people that are doing something, that are actually, and hold them accountable.
Although I like the Mises Caucus.
Mises, I'm fine with Mises or Tom Woods,
because I feel like they're taking action in a way that is positive by taking over the Libertarian Party and making it actually rational. Yeah, but what I mean is, like, do the thing that, don't make civic involvement bring you down. It's not an either or of, well, I have to do this horrible fight that just drains me and makes me feel like shit and I have to read the news all the time, or I'm on my country estate ignoring it all until they come to my door. Exactly. Do something that actually fuels you. And like, I feel like civic engagement can actually be fueling, is what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be a bummer. Even in these times, make sure you're picking something that you enjoy, or you won't be motivated to keep doing it. And mentally, we have to focus on our wins and stop expecting these like big leaps. Oh, if Fauci isn't arrested, it's
Yeah.
hopeless.
I see a lot of
No.
that. I see a
Yes,
lot of that.
I see
People
so
are
much of that.
people are looking for a messiah. Stop looking for a messiah. You know,
People are looking
we
for a
need
messiah,
leaders.
but I think because we
But
thought we were free and we're learning we're not, we feel like it's sudden. So we should be able to suddenly get back to being free like we were 10 years ago. We weren't free 10 years ago.
exactly.
So I think you have to remember that, keep that in mind. What you see today is just what you're becoming aware of. And so it's a much bigger, deeper issue. And don't let that unmotivate you. I'm trying to say that should motivate you, because your expectations need to be changed from Fauci's going to get arrested. No, he's embedded in the deep
We're going to
state.
drain the swamp.
Drain the swamp, lock her up. I mean, come on, it's just not that. It's not going to be like that. So recognize your victories as they happen, like Elon Musk freeing Twitter, Kanye West, whatever his weird Jew issues are. At least he's exposing something that's going on in Hollywood that is, and he is doing that at great risk to himself. So
look at someone like DeSantis in Florida and how much success he's had.
Yes.
He's hugely popular by pursuing good policies.
Yes.
So.
And Carrie Lake. And so there are a lot of positive signs. And yeah, I think that's what we have to focus on in 2023. So it's just been such a bummer of a year. This like post-COVID, we've had a lot of excess deaths and excess illness as a result of the medical policies. And a lot of people are much more stressed out. So everybody's dealing with more strife in their personal lives. I got a lot of mail after last week saying, me too. Like I'm seeing family members die. I'm seeing people arguing a lot more. I think everybody's experiencing that. So we can be examples in our community. I try to remember that too. Like, I'm not going to let all the meanness and the fighting drag me into that place. I want to be, I said this last week, I want to go out, meet and interact with people who are like-minded, Democrats, Republicans, whatever, who are pro-freedom, who are cheerful and who aren't like, who are cheerfully going about this business. And I'm going to be cheerful and hopefully influence them.
Maybe a way to put it is you have to judiciously pick your battles. Don't just fight, pick the battles you want to fight, but also judiciously pick your friends and your allies.
Yeah.
And be, that's what I found really works. Like if you find really good people, you can really accomplish a lot in your area and your state. And but
be a leader.
Don't fight ridiculous battles. Like you're not going to arrest Fauci. Like why, like do what you can, but don't expect that. And if you don't get that, don't be mad about it. Like I'm some existential crisis because of it.
It's fun to say like, get a rope and lock her up or whatever. But my real expectations aren't that. It's more fun to say that stuff. And I think it's important that we do say stuff like that and mock these people and keep doing that. I don't mean to say don't have that kind of fun, because it's fun, but don't expect it and don't require, if that didn't happen, Trump failed because he didn't lock up Hillary. Did he fail? What did he get done? So anyway, that's it for our 2022 podcast. And we will see you guys in February 2023. And we'll tell you how we're suddenly on the best diet and suddenly in great shape, exercising every day and suddenly very civically involved, and everybody's happy and healthy. And
that's right.
All right. We'll see you guys in February. Thanks for joining us.
There is a house called the House of Sunny. It's filled with satire and fun. It's been the demise of bad ideas, and we'll know what's right when she's done. So download this free podcast now and give
perspectives you may lack. It's concise and right and achieves world peace. Guaranteed all your money back. Last time, ready?